Hello there, and welcome to Isla Friends. This is the season two. This is a space where we sit with people who are shaping conversations, challenging systems, and showing up with courage and honesty. I'm your host, Islamia Sodekadejo. You call me the radio girl, and I'm happy to be back for the second season of Isla and Friends. And this season is all about open, real conversations, not just about achievements, but about the challenges behind them, the social issues they are connected to, and the human stories that often get left out. Today's conversation is one that asks us to slow down, listen deeply, and reflect on the kind of island that we are becoming. I'm not doing this conversation by myself. As you know, in season one, I always bring my friends to the show. So I'm joined today by Theresa O'Donohoe, a change maker, a mother of five. We are going to talk about that. And an author of Island at the Crossroads, Lisdoonvarna. Did I pronounce that correctly, Theresa?
Lisdoonvarna. Yep.
Lisdoonvarna, yeah. Direct provision and the far right. You will
Yep.
agree with me, this is an important conversation. Theresa Hare work is rooted in lived experience and community observation. Through her writing, she explores how national policies, local realities, and the rising far right narratives intersect, and what that means for families, for communities, and for the future that our children are going to inherit. This is a conversation about courage, about responsibility, and hope. And I'm so grateful to have Theresa here with us today. Thank you so much, Theresa, for doing this with us on GoCom Radio.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Ella. It's always nice to talk about this issue.
Yeah, let's start from yourself. You describe yourself as a change maker and mom of five. How do those parts of your life shape the work that you do?
Well, I've realised the change maker part of it comes from being neurodivergent, having autism and ADHD and epilepsy and all those sorts of things. So my brain is kind of a systems analyst, basically what I am, and with that comes changing things because you're forever analysing. Having five children means that I analyse the world that's around them and the world they're growing up into and try to make life the best I can for them, like any mother is doing, I suppose, or any parent, most parents. So that's where they cross over. This change maker has come out of how to make the world a better place for my kids, basically.
For the kids. That is very important. I always tell people as well that 98% of the reason I do what I do is because I want to make it better for my children. I have my own shock absorber and some degree of what I can take, but I don't want them to go through that. I want a better community, and I want to be part of that change. And I think we have that in common. Thank you again for what you do. Your book, why is it important? That is a very powerful title, by the way. Island at the Crossroads. I think it's sharp. It's there's no mixing of words. It's just straight to point
Mm.
because I feel we are at that crossroad. What does the crossroad represent for you personally and also for Ireland?
Yeah, actually, I was going to call it Ireland at the intersection, because I find so many crossroads, like there's so many roads leading to the same place. There's so many um, parameters that are meeting and converging around about now in humanity. So I would come from originally a place of environmental protection and climate action. So I see the bigger picture of colonialism, patriarchy, and how that systems in place is kind of all about capitalizing on the environment around us and the people who live in the world. So that's kind of where I start before anything ever happened in Lisdoonvarna. And then this just to me, migration is going to be a big issue because of climate, and that has always been something I'm aware of. 30 million people moving by 2030, and I've been aware of that for a long time. So I will always have been more, my brain is ready for that to happen before it is for an awful lot of other people. So I was in a situation at the time that there was direct provision proposed for Lisdoonvarna to know that migration was going to be a part of it, climate breakdown is part of it, environmental destruction is part of it. So there's so many things converging. And then at the time, I wasn't that aware of the far right. I knew, the resource depletion, all the environmental factors I was well aware of, and the social factors that would create and was and is creating. So that's where my Crossroads started. And then
so when did you write the book?
So in 2019 I found out that my story was being used by the far right to agitate communities around fighting off direct provision. So it had been shown in Oughterard where there had been an arson attack on the premises proposed for direct provision. And I found out afterwards that there was a film made that was being shown, and I was in that film. That was about a year and a half after the direct provision was opened for, or proposed for Lisdoonvarna. When I found that out and I looked at that film, I immediately sat down and wrote a book. that weekend.
Oh my God. Okay.
How
I can understand now why the Lisdoonvarna is significant to the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about Lisdoonvarna, a little bit about it, because I'm actually hearing about the name of this town for the first time. And maybe because I'm a migrant, or maybe for some people as well. I know some Irish that have been like in Dublin like forever, and you may not get to know everywhere. Tell us a little bit about Lisdoonvarna.
So Lisdoonvarna is a little village in the north of Clare. So it's near the Cliffs of Moher, which would be well known by a lot of people as a tourist attraction. It's not a very big. It looks bigger than the number of people that inhabit it, because it has always been known as a tourist destination because of it being a spa. It was a spa resort, but it's not anymore. But there is converging waters of different minerals in the area, so it became this big place for people to go to. So there was a lot of hotels in Lisdoonvarna. At one stage I heard it was 16. I think I only put 12 in my book, but I was told and corrected afterwards there was more. So it has a lot of bed capacity, we'll say.
Okay.
And then in 2018 there was a proposal to open one of the closed hotels as a direct provision centre, and that's when I found out about the far right.
So you said you wrote the book that weekend. Like, did you finish it like that fast, or did you have some difficulties, challenges writing the book, or it was easy because you were just putting down the thoughts that things you really have thought about really hard, or how was it?
Well, I only wrote really 3 chapters of what was eventually published over that weekend, maybe more. But when I went to publish it, I was thinking of doing it myself, but that was just proving too difficult to organize myself. So I got a publisher, somebody who wanted to publish it then. And then COVID struck. So it was supposed to be out in August of 2020. And that was all put on hold. But in that meantime, between the time that I had written my little story about my life and what was happening with the far right in Lisdoonvarna and the bigger kind of picture, without being too in-depth, I then had extra months and eventually extra years to add an even bigger picture, because COVID became a big message of the far right. Then Trump got into office and things like or Trump got kicked out of office, should I say, and the insurrection in Washington, whatever day, that happened as well. So the more and more material kind of jumped on my lap, and I just
Kind of.
thought, you know something, I'm going to bring this bigger, because the book itself, the story, for the start, really, it wasn't just small time far right that live in Lisdoonvarna. Though we have one of the founders of Breitbart Media, whose grandmother's house is in Lisdoonvarna. So he put out a big call, and it's quite obvious that that is what has fueled the funding and the support for the far right in Ireland. In 2018, there was it dropped on his doorstep as much as it dropped on my doorstep, and he has a lot more people with money throughout the world and friends with Donald Trump and things like that. So that all changed the support the far right had. It gave me a big insight into the far right, because of that influence, a lot more agitators in Ireland got active and mobilised and came to Lisdoonvarna, like door stopped us and were running videos, and there was a massive online presence that totally brought down the idea of Lisdoonvarna as a tourist place, because it was so hate fueled. So there was a lot of people beginning to notice the online presence, which was kind of the big start to it. But then there was also the physical presence of people who were going around to pubs and agitating. So that's where it all started.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So you are still listening to Isla and Friends, the season 2, that with theme Hearts to Heart, and I'm sitting with Theresa O'Donohoe. This is GoCom Radio.
GoCom Radio, the people's voice.
Now, Theresa, I want you to shed more light on the far right, and what is your own perspective of far right, especially the impact it has on Ireland?
Well, my experience showed me that it was a small group of people with making a lot of noise, really, just making a lot of noise. Especially when they came to Clare, because it was kind of at the starting point then. But they got a lot more external support, especially American support, and funding, I'd say, because these people who were starting these blogs and things like that all of a sudden had really fancy materials to do with travel to Lisdoonvarna. I didn't realize I was talking to one of them one day. He was interviewing, he was asking me questions and hoping that he could persuade me that what was happening was wrong, but I didn't think of that at the time. So then they seem to have kind of grown legs since then, but not to the extent that you would think, because even in Lisdoonvarna, it seemed that there was hundreds of far-right agitators, but there was probably 5, and they had full time on their hands to make noise. So they can't have many jobs between them if they're on social media all the time and all the time agitating. That's all I've noticed. I do know that the advent of COVID added to that, because I've learned the tactics of the far right. I mean, they go around mopping up people who are disenfranchised, no matter what their cause. They'll go around and tell you, oh yeah, I agree with you, come on, join us and we'll be friends and we'll fight for you and we'll advocate for you. They don't really care about your cause at all. They just want to get supporters. And their overall agenda is racism, and homophobia, and just to the white supremacy. And if you lay that bare to a lot of people that are following the sound of the far right, they don't want to hear that. They don't see that part of it. But we only have to look to America to see where it heads, really.
Yeah. Funding is one of the things that will sustain a group. And far right, of course, we know it's not going to be a difference if there's funding. They keep waxing stronger, even though they are small. We can say now that we can say they are small but mighty. How has writing a book, taking a stand against far rights, calling for a more inclusive Ireland, how has this speaking out in different ways, how has that affected you as a person and your family?
Well, I suppose my kids just roll their eyes, and there goes mom again. Just, what's she fighting for now? Personally, I'm very proud. It's something I just had the gut. I have to do this. Like it's probably an autistic response to it, and the injustice of what happened. But it my book then. Everyone was a few people were going, is this research or is this a story? Is it a drama? What is it? And I said it's a mixture of everything. So it's on a course then with Maynooth University for the integration course, I think it is. So it's given a snapshot of what life was like in Ireland at that time, and how where the far right started to gather momentum. And that has proven useful for people who are doing research as much as it's proving useful. I really wanted the book to just everyone to read the book so that they would know what to expect in their community. But unfortunately, it didn't get published quick enough to do that. And whether anyone would have read it before they knew anyway is, who's going to read it?
Yeah.
But
I want to come to, I know as a family person, sometimes when we want to do some things, but we are like, okay, because of my children, either the fear of because of my children push you to do it or push you back from doing it. I'll come back to that, but I don't want to miss getting the book. How can we get the book?
Oh, it's online. I think Orphan Press is the publishers, but you can ask. And I know Mahoney's bookstore in Limerick and Clare have it, or have access to it. It's also online. The ebook thing and that sort of thing. But you can go into any library and ask them to store it and stock it, and they can get it in. Everybody who's a member of a library can have books. You can request 3 books a year that they buy in. So go to a library, ask the library for it or to get it for you. I think that's the most sustainable way to do things. For me, it's not about making money. It's about the story and people understanding the tactics of far right. That's what it's about.
Yeah. So I want to come back to the moment of fear, pushback, or do I go on? Do I just stop? In the moment like that, when it feels low or lonely, what helps you? What keep you going?
I think there was a time we were very afraid. Like we realized that we were on a hit list basically for the far right, and I was very concerned then about my safety. Well, not as much as I was about the children's safety. So I was telling people in the community, don't let anyone know where I live. Like if somebody comes along and which would happen in Ireland. So where's Theresa's house? Oh, there it is out the road, And I was going, don't tell anyone where I live. So I had to kind of put that out. Went to the guards about the online threats, and there wasn't an awful lot they could do at the time. I think that might have changed now because more high-profile people are being targeted. So we were a bit worried for a while, but I didn't want that fear to upset the kids too much. I didn't want to drive fear into them, so I didn't really go on about it with them. But locally we had set up a good network of people who understood what was going on, who were aware of the far right. As much as the far right were aware of what was going on, we had a group of people aware of what was of the far right and what they were doing. And in Clare, we have a very good solidarity network of people who kind of watch what's happening with far right agitators and are great support for each other. I mean, we have quite a bit of heavy hitters of the far right in Clare. We have the chair of the Irish Freedom Party, we have the chair of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, I think it is, and we have the founder of Breitbart Media. So there's kind of, and while they exist in Clare, I think our group is pretty strong at keeping them at bay.
You are doing great work there. Let's look at the bigger picture, the island itself. Do you think direct provision is misunderstood, or what is your own perspective? Okay, let me put it that way. How do you see direct provision, and how do you think other people see it, especially the far right?
Well, I knew nothing about direct provision before this happened, even though I realise now I lived beside 2 different places, direct provision, over my time moving across Ireland. I remember helping out somewhere to do Christmas presents. Turned out to be a direct provision centre, but I didn't know that for years. So let me see. I didn't know a lot, and then the more I found out, the more I thought, oh my God, this is horrendous. Imagine living in a bedroom with your children. Coming to another country, first of all, is a difficult, horrendous situation for a lot of people. And then you're being put up in a hotel, herded like cattle, given food, the cheapest possible food that can be, this was about profit. As far as I was concerned, it was all about profit. So we were very strong on that at the start. We got involved as a local community to make sure that that couldn't happen. And we did our best to prepare to make things so that the people in direct provision could come out of the centre, because there's not an awful lot you can do in a hotel with a small lobby. How it's being portrayed by the far right is a total joke, I mean, before this I thought, I'll go on a holiday, I'll go to a hotel for a weekend, or a week. But to actually live in a hotel is a whole different ball game. So the far right can spin it like, oh, these people are in hotels, they're having a great time. But that's because
great time of their lives.
That's what you might do for one weekend of a year, maybe, or a week of a year. That's not what it is to do 24/7, 365 days a year. And then financially, it's not a great, I mean, the situation is, we would do our best to get in supplies that we know are essential. And then there's a capacity for people in direct provision to get the extra bits and pieces for their kids and that sort of thing, because they're struggling as much more than we're struggling. I mean, I'm a single parent, so I know what it's like to bring up kids, but at least I had bedrooms for each of them and I could get away from them. You can't do in a bedroom.
Well, for direct provision, it's not like that. Maybe the whole family, whether you are 3 or 4, you're likely to be in one room, especially if all the kids are underage.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's horrendous. I mean, I couldn't imagine living in that situation. And then we were these meals that be thrown out in front of you, and the provider may not cater to different ethnic requirements and different meals that people take, the religious or ethnic backgrounds. So we fought for like this. So the Thomond Hotel then that was initially a direct provision in Lisdoonvarna, I think they broke up the kitchen to 8 places where people could cook for themselves. We found out what people needed and what they would like that would make their lives a little bit easier. And did our best. Yeah, we did our best to do that, or a little bit more like, I can't say home, but it's more like
it can't feel at home. It can't feel like home, really.
I mean, how the far right get away with the spin they put on how privileged you are to be in direct provision is just like unbelievable.
Talking about the spin and the misinformation that they are in these fancy hotels, having the time of their lives, everything free. They are the reason there are no jobs, no accommodation for anyone. All those misinformation in the community, and the fight, the violence in our community as well. You are doing your part, challenging it, with your words, with your book and other things, with your community networks. How do we as a community, larger community, whoever is listening right now, how can we do our own part as well in challenging the far right?
Well, there's, the building your own local support network is really important. It's hard to do anything like that on your own. So getting, raise a flag, say who wants to help out here, and it's amazing the number of people come forward. Like, you'll always have so many more people come forward than are arguing against it, and they may not be the ones to come to the forefront, but once there's somebody that stands up, other people will follow. That's what I learned definitely here, and I've learned across the country since, because people were getting in touch with me afterwards to say this is what's happening in my community, and we put out a call for other people to get involved. I think one of the things, so getting involved with the other groups, but there's also like the likes of NGOs, and we have the Clare Immigration Support Centre. The Women's Network was really interested in being involved because, again, it's minorities being attacked, and there was, like, ours was women and children, so like they were very vulnerable to exploitation and especially in Lisdoonvarna. I haven't got into the matchmaking festival. But then there's the Hope and Courage Collective, which is hopeandcourage.ie. I think that's a national group that's set up, or national, I think it's an NGO now, but set up to raise awareness within communities they have lots of resources on how to counter the misinformation and disinformation of the far right. So I think debunking what they're saying helps, but it's a full-time job. I mean, if you were to sit down and debunk, someone who has time all day to put out rubbish on social media, you'd want
And
to
they are
know
being paid for that time anyway, so they are happy to keep doing it.
Yeah, and a lot of them are grifters. Like, they'll have a YouTube channel or something, and then they have a link to buy me a coffee, or pay for this. They must be enjoying themselves. But like, there's more and more stories coming out now about the people that are behind the far right, and they're not the sort of people you want in your life anyway. So the fact they're far right. Now, there's a conflation between people who are falling for the far right messaging that may not be far right, as I call it, in their hearts, they may not be far right, but they're so disillusioned with what's going on in different aspects of their lives that they might be falling under the spell of the far right. And I really like to make that differentiation, because the far right agitators have a different agenda. They want to break down systems of societies and have they have the kind of white nationalist agenda, and we need Ireland for the Irish and stuff like that. That's a whole different ballgame to the people who are upset about housing or upset about education or healthcare or whatever. And that's where we need to make that differentiation. And that's where getting involved locally in movements for housing and movements for healthcare, bringing it back from the far right is important. So being involved with your local housing actions and things.
Yeah, I like that. It is normal to feel upset about the housing issue, the healthcare. You go to A&E for something, and you are there for 3 hours, for 8 hours, and you are not attended to, or except you look like you are going to, unlife yourself. I mind the word there's a word we cannot say on air. You understand? So it's just natural to have questions, but at the same time, it is different from now making it about far right. So for people like that who have natural concerns for the community, for the country that they love, who want to see things get better, but they have been influenced by far right, and even though in their hearts that is not what they are looking for, they are only looking for answers. What would be your message for them today? I want you to make that clarification and a kind of put it straight to them and let them know the difference. Let's have that distinction between the real concern and the being influenced by far rights.
Yeah, so the far right kind of adopt some sort of, they adopt your issues just to get your attention. But there's probably a positive, proactive group already working on it. Like, I live in Clare, so our local hospital for me would be University Hospital in Limerick, which has the worst waiting times. Like, you could be in there for 2 days on a trolley waiting to be even seen properly. So there's a Midwest Hospital campaign going on years, well before the far right, that if you want to put your effort into the hospital campaign, join that. There's we had a housing action group, and that was through our public participation network. So, like, the public participation network is in every local authority area. It's a place for community groups to come together to have their say in policy. So at the end of the day, this is about policy, you know, and it's not something you asked me 20 years ago that I'd be involved in policy. I would have laughed, well, 25 years ago. But now I see that it all comes down to policy, and getting involved in policy is probably is much more constructive and much more effective than getting involved with the far right. You know, the far right are just there to generate hate and anger and division. And division is what has, you know, that's what's happening in America. The division in America is, it's not a black and white situation, and it's not a black and white society. It's very intersectional. You know, we have a crossroads, but there's an intersection of everything, and we need to look for the positive solutions to things. We need to work out how we can work together to address all of these problems for everybody, and work with the systems that exist, because there's no point in just trying to pull the system apart, because then you get left with people. I don't know if you know about headless chickens. We'd say people running around like headless chickens because there's no system in place. Yeah, it's about working together, collaborating to build the systems, or to work with structures we have to build the systems that work for everybody, not the far right, because they're just prompting hate and racism, phobia,
which we don't need as a community. So in the middle of all this, where do we find hope? And is your book sparking, you know, some hope for parents, for the community, for the leaders, for the policymakers?
Well, I remember when I wrote the book, the editor was going, "But Theresa, what do we do? Like, what's the ending?" So she pushed me to come up with the solutions to all of this. And I'm looking at her going, "Don't ask me the solutions. At the end of the day, the solutions come from the people involved." And that's where I'm big into the democratic process. And far right is anti-democracy, but I'm very much into democracy, and especially local decision making. So for me, the hope comes from action. And, you know, I go back to my climate activism, and Greta Thunberg is, you know, I'm delighted to see Greta Thunberg coming along, because I was fighting for climate justice for a long time. One of her things is that despair and your hope comes from action. And I think getting involved and taking action and getting involved with the progressive movements that are pushing for change. And, you know, the system always needs change. The system always needs someone pushing for it. You know, we wouldn't have same-sex marriages in Ireland if there hadn't been someone agitating for it. And they're positive changes, you know. We wouldn't have repealed the 8th Amendment if it wasn't for agitation, for movement and for change. We wouldn't have women with bank accounts. We wouldn't have women voting. We wouldn't have women on the mortgages. We wouldn't have women's names on the houses. All of this is progressive change, positive change. So we need people working for positive change. And that's where my hope comes from, that there are people working for positive change. Everywhere in Irish society, there's people working for positive change. And if you want something changed, follow those people instead of the far right.
Thank you so much. You are still listening to Isla and Friends. This is the 6th season 2 that we theme Heart to Heart. And I'm speaking with Theresa, and we'll be right back.
GoCom Radio, the people's voice.
Now, before we go, let's have some reflections, okay? What word, do you have a word that can describe Ireland right now?
I thought about following.
Following, why is that?
Following because it's not breaking the mold yet. I think, okay, it's also leading. There's a certain amount of following and leading, we'll say. So like the fact that the far right are getting in there at all means that we're not breaking that mold, you know. Now they're being pushed around as well, of course, but we're also leading when it comes to, you know, speaking up for Palestine and speaking up for social justice. which is great. And Irish people are known throughout the world for fighting for justice, so I like to think that we will do that at home as much as we will do that abroad. And that's, so I started with following and then I was going leading.
Following on one hand, leading on the other hand. Okay. Is that something you wish more people will listen to right now in Ireland?
I think we have the capacity to be good leaders, but maybe we just don't have the time, energy, and then the confidence too. I was lucky in Lisdoonvarna. I was trained in community facilitation. I was trained in mediation and that sort of thing. So I had the confidence to do that. And people, I think, should be more confident themselves, especially when their heart is true and what they're doing is for good. It's nothing. It's something we all have the capacity to do. It's just finding that confidence, and I think, or at least finding the people who have stood up and have that confidence, which is what happened with us. Is once I stood up and says, I stood up actually and says, what do you need? What do you want to do to the community? But then people came forward that wanted to welcome asylum seekers and to help with the direct provision. So that once somebody stood up. So if you are not the person to stand up, go find the person who has stood up. And they say that the most important person in a movement is the second person, because it's all well and good someone standing up, but until someone joins that person, it hasn't started to become a movement, and they would probably not succeed in it because they won't do it on their own. So I think that building movements and building change go hand in hand with people with confidence and collaboration.
Okay, thank you so much, Theresa. Is that a value you hope your children will carry forward?
Not to be silent in the face of injustice.
That's good. That is a great one. That is a great one.
Yeah.
And I'm curious as well, Theresa. Will you in future be running for elective position in the community? I think one thing is to know about policy and they advocate for change, but then when you step out and represent your community, you are now at the table to actually see that the policies, the advocacy is actually implemented, the change are done, and you make that change, as a policymaker, and it's a whole lot of different thing entirely than activism and now like a policymaker or elective public rep. Would that be something you would think about?
So my life since then, I did actually run in the general election in 2020. Before the book was published, I think, but it was only because somebody in Clare, we have a thing about pushing women to run for election. I didn't actually really want to be I suppose I could have been a TD, but it wasn't something that I was, I was just running for 3 weeks just to bring climate action and social justice and that to the table for the conversations. Then I won a scholarship to do a master's in climate change, and was able to do that because it was paid for and it was online because of COVID. So I've done a master's in climate change, policy, media and society, and since done another course on feminist climate justice. And now I have a job in the Department of Environment. So I've gone through loads and loads of strands. I see society needing layers and layers in order to function. And I've been, the stay-at-home mom, I've been the activist at local level, parent associations, things like that. I've been activist at community level, at county level, at national level, international level. I've tried the politics, and now I'm in policy itself, in the civil service.
Okay, thank you, Theresa. You just mentioned climate change, and I think before you go, let's talk about that quickly as well. Where are we climate change-wise in Ireland?
Climate change, it goes hand in hand with the state of the environment. We are getting in more, we're making more renewable energy. We still have ways to go with reducing emissions in other areas. And I think there's commitment from government at last. I've been fighting for commitment from government for a long time. So it's good to see it in the programme for government for the last few governments. I think in rural Ireland, getting it into the hearts and mind of everybody seems to be working. Again, this is going back to a far right issue because the far right are fueling climate denial. So that's another reason why I don't particularly like the far right. So I think it still goes back to democracy and local action and collaboration. I think for everything on the international stage, because I've been to the COP conference a few times with youth, I see the youth. I would have brought a youth delegation to 3 COPs, and they're amazing. I see the young people, and while I hate the fact that they're being handed this to sort out, I am inspired by their commitment and their actions and their drive and all the different things they're going to do. Some of them they're in studying law and hell-bent on making sure that things are changed. So that's, it's power to the people, and the people have the power to change things, which
and you think we are going to get there? We are going to actually make that change?
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, we have to. Well, before for the listener that's listening right now, I want to go back to your book before we say goodbye on the show today. And from your book, and from our conversation today on the program, what do you want people that have read the book, or that will read the book later, or people that have listened to you today on Isla Friends, what do you want them to take away, to hold on to remember you for?
To remember that a small group of people working together can stop fascism. I think that's what happened in Lisdoonvarna. A small group of people working together. We collaborated, we took on fascism, and we didn't let it take hold of our community. It didn't have as much resources as it has now. So I think coming away from my book, I would like people to be inspired by what we did achieve. I'd like them to be more aware of the tactics of the far right. That's why I said the tactics in the title, because it is about tactics, And I would like people to talk with other people about it, to bring it up at Christmas dinner, bring it up at Easter, to bring it up at every opportunity in the pub, wherever, and challenge people who are repeating far right messages. Challenge people who are saying all our jobs are going, all our women are being taken, it's absolute baloney. Most women who are sexually assaulted and abused and killed in Ireland are by someone they know. We're at full employment. If we didn't have migrant workers, we wouldn't have our hospitals and our healthcare and a lot of our building that's going on, and people going on about there being no homes, but actually who's building
Definitely, yeah.
And who's keeping our hospitals open. So challenging, get that from my book, and challenge the people who are just repeating that stuff, because the more they repeat it, the more other people hear it, and then the more people get fallen into the trap of the far right. So I think that's important, to get inspired.
Thank you so much. You are on social media. How can our listener follow your work?
Well,
I know we are talking about how they can get your book. How can they follow what you do?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Theresa O'Donohoe, but I'm not on social media much anymore now that I'm in the civil service. I'm not an activist as such anymore. I'm not a publicly activist. I'm writing policy and looking at policy that isn't actually anything to do with the far right, other than the far right wants to dismantle society as it sees it. But my book goes back to the story of what happened in Lisdoonvarna and my personal experience. So my presence on social media is not as it used to be. I had a blog on climate change and my activism for years, and then I wrote the book on the far right, and now I'm pretty much working on national policy, which I don't write about.
Thank you so much, Theresa. I always like to ask my guests for the last time before they go on the show to say something to their, to their teenage self, maybe the 13 or 14-year-old Theresa. What will you tell her?
My 10-year-old Theresa.
Yeah, maybe 10, 12, 13.
My teenager Theresa going, yeah, there's absolutely no way you could have predicted the absolute, I can't even say insanity. The absolute trajectory of your life went completely off. The whole idea of getting married, having children, and living happily ever after that I had in my teenage years, or being a guard. All of my plans as a teenager went out the window.
To be a guard?
I wanted to be a guard, but I had epilepsy, but I was diagnosed with epilepsy in my teenage years, so I wasn't allowed to be a guard. And then, sure, yeah. Life doesn't go. Be prepared for life not going the way you plan it, I think is the. And I learned that in my teenage years with the diagnosis of epilepsy. So, yeah, be prepared to change at and not to fear those changes, but to embrace change and think everything happens for a reason and work with it.
Thank you so much, Theresa. It's been an absolute honor having you on Isla Friends today. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the book. It's so amazing. It takes a lot of courage to do what you do. I know a lot of people might want to do the same, but then they don't want problem with the far right. My children are there, they will know where I live, and creating fear in their heart, and at the end of the day not doing anything. But you are not like that. You did not just sit down and complain and say this is wrong. You're actually stepping out and making effort to actually right that wrong. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Isla.
So, and that'll be it on this edition of Isla and Friends, the second season, that with theme Heart to Heart. Next week, when I'll be coming your way, it will be with another changemaker that is doing something great in our community. Thank you so much, and it's bye for now.
No, thanks, Isla. That was good.